In the year 1857, two relatively unknown designers, a landscape architect, Frederick Law Olmsted, and an architect, Calvert Vaux, they undertook the gargantuan task of creating the first public park in United States history. Amidst incredible opposition, they envisioned, fought for, and eventually created and built a vision for unlimited recreation to parks and open space. Now, from this vision and from, in many cases, acres of wasteful, swampy land was created New York City's Central Park. Yes, it's a treasured icon around the world. This park was revolutionary. A public open space that enticed citizens to recreate and to relax and to escape the urban life, regardless of their economic status, their age, occupation, ethnicity, or gender. In fact, Olmsted and Vaux, they were so opposed to the concept even of adding ornate gates and entrances to the park because simple entrances suggested that all were welcome, regardless of rank or wealth. Well, in the 161 years since that effort began, most of the developed world has been incredibly successful at creating these open spaces where people can escape the rigors of daily life and improve their health and rest their minds. Unfortunately, after all this time and progress, we are still facing those same battles that Olmsted and Vaux fought for a large demographic of our society. This demographic, despite the fact that parks exist in abundance, are still blocked from access to these parks. And they're still waiting for someone to recognize their need. These people I'm talking about are persons with disabilities, individuals on the autism spectrum, and those with sensory processing disorders. You see, society often doesn't recognize those individuals around us that are living with life-impacting disabilities. And perhaps that's because most of these disabilities aren't really visually apparent. But did you know that 18.7%, that's 1 in 5 people, are suffering from one or more disabilities? In fact, if everyone in the audience tonight in this theater represented the children between the ages of 6 and 14 in the United States, the first 5 rows of you, up to my kids right there, you would have a disability. And 6 of you, only 6 of you, would have a physical disability that would require a wheelchair or a walker or something like that. So that means the remainder of you 5 rows, you represent children who are facing communicative, social, sensorial, intellectual, and other disabilities. Chances are everyone in the room tonight knows someone with a disability. Now, these disabilities, they impact individual lives to the point where they can't even enjoy simple, basic activities such as going to a park. But let's keep it real. These individuals, we haven't even talked about the people who surround them, their support group, family and friends who are unable to participate in the same activities because of barriers, whether physical or emotional or sensorial. These barriers, they often go unnoticed by most of us, and perhaps that's because they're unintended. But when we build outdoor environments and we don't view them through a lens of disability, there are significant consequences. As an example of barriers, a few years ago, my wife and I took our young family on a trip to New York City. And the parents in the audience will be able to relate to this, but at the time, we had a young infant who was only a year old. And we needed a stroller in order to visit the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty and Times Square and many other attractions. If you've ever tried to navigate New York City and its subway system with a stroller, you can sympathize with the difficulty that we had, climbing stairs and lifting that stroller over ticket gates and getting up into trains and boats and buses. It seemed like everywhere we went, there was another barrier that made things just a little bit more difficult for us. I can only imagine what it would have been like if we were facing more difficult restrictions than a stroller, like pushing a wheelchair. And yet, many of our friends and families, they do face these restrictions, and much more difficult ones for that matter, on a daily basis. I've also witnessed as friends struggle to take their own families to a local park. Not because the children were facing a disability, but because they themselves as adults were facing disabilities that kept them from engaging with the children. They were unable to, because of the physical barriers, they were unable to get up and play with the children and get them down when they got stuck. And in some cases, unable to retrieve a defiant child when it was time to go and that child refused to stop playing. These experiences can be humiliating and self-defeating, really. And so often they just tend to avoid the outdoors altogether. And these are just two of 1,000 examples of barriers that our friends and families face. But the good news is that proper upfront planning and design can help to eliminate these barriers. Through social inclusion and sensory integration, we can get families playing together and becoming more healthy. So let's talk about social inclusion and sensory integration for just a few minutes. It can't be overstated how important social interaction is for children. But recently, researchers are describing Generation Z children and younger as being unpracticed at thinking out loud and requiring a great deal of translation. This is due to a lack of processing skills, most likely caused by the effects of technology on their development. Along similar veins of study, other researchers are finding alarming correlations between the rise of technology, or handheld technology, and spiking rates of depression, social isolation, and suicide among our youth. As if these weren't large enough issues to tackle, consider the additional isolation and developmental delays that children with disabilities face, and it becomes unmistakably clear why a paradigm shift in design for social inclusion is necessary. Play environments that are focused solely on running and jumping and getting the wiggles out, they are no longer meeting the needs of our children. Children now more than ever need environments that foster eye contact with each other, teamwork, conversation, and dramatic play. It might sound difficult to do this, but in reality, it's really simple to encourage this behavior. So adding cool features like dual-channel slides and spring rockers with sidecars, water taps that you can work better with two people rather than just one, raised elements for eye contact during play, life-size game boards. Lots of other cool features can be added to the environment to encourage interaction. It can also help children to navigate this social or the complex world of social relationships and help them to understand cues and learn how to cooperate and how to negotiate. And it's super easy to add these things. There's really no excuses. If the opportunities are there, children will, and they can, monitor their own needs and then meet their own needs for social interaction. But social interaction, however, isn't the only element of childhood development, right? Our sensory systems that help us understand what's going on in the world around us, those are also very important, and they're tied to social inclusion. So imagine with me, if you will, that we all have a drinking glass within which all of our sensory inputs are held. Just like in our cupboards at home, drinking glasses come in different sizes and shapes, and some holding more than others. At the extremes, some of us have a really large 50-ounce big gulp size glass within which we can put a lot of sensory input. You know, children who need to run around and jump a lot and constantly fidgeting and touching things, they have a big glass within which all of that needs to be placed. They often can't find enough activity to fill this glass. It's pretty big. Those children are often stereotyped as being unmannered or hyper. In reality, they just need more information in order to concentrate. Sounds backwards, doesn't it? But it's absolutely true. At the other end of the extreme, the flip side here, some of us have a mini 1-ounce espresso-sized glass that barely fits anything at all. Children with a small glass, they need to find areas to avoid sensory input, at least for long enough to self-regulate and get back to normal. Now, if we don't provide areas for respite, then behavioral issues tend to emerge. And those are people tend to view those as temper tantrums. In reality, what these children need is a way to escape this swirling kaleidoscope of information that they can't understand and they can't manage. When we were in elementary school, most of us learned about the 5 senses, the basic ones, right? We have touch, sound, sight, smell, and taste. Did you know, however, that there are additional sensory systems that are crucial to our interactions every day? The proprioceptive system is our sense of our spatial awareness. The vestibular is our sense of balance. And interoceptive is our sense of the internal body. So we all kind of have a natural understanding of these systems, but to help clarify, let's do a quick exercise. Everybody engage here. Everyone close your eyes, and then, without peeking in the front there, touch the tip of your nose with your finger. Okay, most of you are able to do that without jamming your finger up your nostrils. And we can do that because of our proprioceptive system. Our joints and our muscles, they help us to understand where our finger is in relation to the rest of our body. And then the pressure on those joints helps us to understand when we've reached an appropriate level of pressure on our nose. Now, the vestibular sense is our sense of balance, and it keeps us upright. So the next exercise, spin around in a circle until you get dizzy. Okay, don't have to do it here tonight, but think back to when you've done that. What's the first thing you do when you stop spinning? You reach out to stabilize yourself. This is because your vestibular system has been thrown into confusion, and you need your other sensory systems to calibrate yourself and get yourself back to normal. In this case, touch and proprioception. Now imagine what it would be like if you were unable to process and understand your spatial awareness and balance systems. How hard would it be to walk the world always dizzy and never knowing where your legs or your arms are at? This is a very real experience for people with sensory processing disorders. Now, the third system was the interoceptive system. And that manages our internal body inputs, helps us to understand when we're hot or cold, when we need to use the restroom, when we're hungry, and when we're itchy, or when our heart rate is out of control, like right now. This system, if it's not working efficiently, then we can only stray so far from home, knowing that at any moment, we might be so hungry that we can't concentrate. We're really too far from that restroom. Or our body is so hot and overheated that it just starts to shut down on us. These two are very real experiences for many in our society, both young and old. So these 8 sensory systems, here we go, they have to be in some form of equilibrium in order for us to socialize, recreate, and to enjoy ourselves. But unfortunately, something as crucial as sensory integration, it is rarely considered, much less implemented when outdoor spaces are designed and constructed. Now, this is why I'm so passionate about this subject. My daily actions as a landscape architect, they dictate what the outdoor environment is going to become. So shame on me and shame on others if the spaces we design don't address basic needs, such as sensory integration and social inclusion. Well, my hope is that through advocacy efforts like this tonight, throughout the nation and throughout the world, that change will happen in how planners approach the outdoor environments. Well, here in Modesto, a group is making that change happen. Since 2015, local community advocates, including Rachel Laredo, a mother of a child with a disability, Kelly Gloria, a clinical director for the Central Valley Autism Project, the City of Modesto, and many others, are addressing this issue head on. They're developing the Awesome Spot Playground at Byer Park. This playground is a socially inclusive and sensory integrated play space unlike any other. This all started as Rachel and her family were dealing with the same issues that we're talking about tonight. But a couple of years ago, they witnessed as a family what a park like this can do for families. And they left that day determined to make sure that their young son, Tommy, and kids like him would have a place to play here in Modesto. Every plant, every space, every walkway, every play element, every detail, down to the coloring of the play surface, has been carefully designed to remove social, physical, and sensory barriers. Hopefully, in 2019, with the continued support of the community, this project will be completed. And we will be able to, all of us, be able to witness as families are able to play together and to enjoy each other's company and recreate outdoors with little thought to the disabilities that normally rule their daily actions and choices. This is our opportunity, everyone, like Olmsted and Vox's, to welcome everyone to a space where differences don't matter. By creating the Awesome Spot Playground, our revolutionary but 21st century version of Central Park, right here in Modesto. Thank you.